Welcome back to the Middle of Culture. I am one of your co-hosts, Peter.
And I am your other co-host, Eden.
Eden, how have you been since last we talked in San Diego?
I just want to say once again, thank you all for listening to that episode and indulging us a little bit of extra break times during this summer, as there's a little bit of extra space between these episodes. Because I was traveling last week, otherwise we maybe could have recorded, but I was in upstate New York.
And how was upstate New York?
Here's the thing. The water was nice and warm. And one day it rained basically the whole day. And so by 2:30 or 3, we were like, fuck this, let's go swimming anyway. So we went swimming in the rain, and it was quite delightful.
Beautiful.
There was no thunder. So it was like, it's not a big deal. Let's go swimming.
Nice. Excellent.
How you been?
And, hanging in there, just sort of working. Last week was interesting. We had a family wedding the Saturday before last. And so we were down in Utah. We had to get up early, drive down, drive back because my wife was in a show that night. And it was closing night for the show that she was in. And then Sunday morning, our youngest son, who Gareth has been on the podcast a couple times, he was heading back over to Boise for Western Age Group Zones. Western Age Group Zones is for kids under the age of 14. If they swim fast enough in certain events, they have qualifying times, then they are able to join the Zones team and go to Zones and compete there. And so he qualified and was heading back over to Boise with the Snake River Swim Zones team, which is people from kind of all of the different teams that he competes against, people from Idaho Falls, Pocatello, Twin Falls, a bunch from Boise, kind of Nampa, that whole area. So all of those kids were over there and competing with teams from Alaska and Hawaii and California and Utah and that sort of thing. And so that was exciting. He was there from Sunday to Sunday, but before he left, he got to do something fun. At least I hope it was fun for him. And that was he got to shave my head.
Hey, we talked about that. How did that go?
We did. It went well. He buzzed it right down. We didn't bick it, but he buzzed it down all the way as low as it would go. And it's already like soft and fuzzy and like a 1/4+ inch of long because my hair grows fairly quick. And it's only been like a week and a half. So but that was fun. He got to go over and had a good time, swam fast. Some of these kids are freaky fast at how fast they swim. And so he was in Boise all week. Tuesday night, my wife drove over to Boise so she could watch and she could time him on Wednesday. And then she, Wednesday night, drove up to Kennewick, Washington, where her sister lives. It was her niece, her sister's daughter, was the one who got married. And they were having the reception in Washington Saturday. So she went up and spent a few days and kind of helped her sister, spent some time with her. Last week it was really weirdly quiet here. It was just me home alone. But,
So then the question is, did you do anything fun with your home alone time? Or was it
I was just going to say,
rest and recuperation?
Let's jump into what we've been checking out, because you know what I checked out a whole lot last week?
What's that? Tell us the tale.
A shit ton of the Olympics. And
oh, yeah.
It was awesome. It was great. In the past, the Olympics have been very frustrating to watch. 2021 was frustrating. We got a Peacock subscription, but it was still a pain in the butt. And you know what? I am going to give the people behind Peacock and the Olympics and the folks at NBC, the team at NBC who was in charge of this, I'm going to give them a whole lot of credit because they nailed it. This year, it was incredible. In the past, they've been really precious about the big events, the things that were going to make the prime time session. and that's made it frustrating. And this go around, I think they pulled their heads out and they just said, fuck it. We're going to show everything live. We're going to put the replays of all of those 3 to 4 hour blocks of live programming up as soon as they're done. And then prime time, yeah, we'll pull in the bigger races and the bigger events and we'll have all that, but we're not going to be precious about it. We're going to let you watch anything you want that has happened anytime you want. And you could go into the Olympic section in the Peacock app. They had something called Gold Zone, where it was like 8 hours a day. You throw that thing up and it would just bounce around from different events that were happening at that time live, where a medal was at stake. You could go into the quad box where there were 4 different events happening and they'd put it on your screen. And you could highlight which one and the audio would come from that. And then you could zoom into that. You could zoom out. You could pick athletes. You could pick different, sports specifically. You could pick different areas of sports. You could watch anything. It was awesome. And considering that I was home alone a lot, it was a great way to fill the silence. And so I watched a lot of Olympics last week and I thoroughly enjoyed it.
Well, that's nice. It sounds like they really improved things, especially that stuff in the app where you can be like, I want to watch all the events that this particular athlete competed in. That's smart. That's really well designed.
Yeah, it really was. It was, like I say, they've really struggled in the past. And it sounds like, again, whoever really kind of just said, no, this is how we need to do it this year, they did a really great job. Like it has me excited. Like here's the thing. It has me excited that I'm like, oh yeah, Peacock has now become, at least for when, every 2 years when the different Olympics come around, it's an indispensable subscription. And because I'm just that guy, I always have this idea of like, well, maybe I'll want to watch something. So I just do a year at a time. So, even though I really only needed it for 2.5 weeks, they got me. I mean, I paid a freaking year subscription because I'm a chump, but yeah, they did a good job.
Well, see, the important thing now is that you can turn on everybody's favorite leave on in the background of your life show, The Office.
Yeah.
It's not mine. It's not mine. I'm not an Office person, but I know lots of people are, and it is very famously one of those shows that people will watch multiple times just on in the background of their lives.
Yeah. Briefly, I never got into The Office when it was airing. I mean, part of it is at the time, I just couldn't watch TV. And I started trying to watch it. And I know everybody's like, oh, you got to get past XYZ. I get it. I mean, I know, it's kind of the same with Parks and Rec, though. I don't think that the first season of Parks and Rec was as rough as the first few episodes of The Office that I've watched. And I'm sure there are people who would call that heresy, but that's fine. But man,
no, that first season of The Office is just wretched.
Yeah. I watched 3 episodes and I'm like, I hate all of these people.
You have to, honestly, if you ever want to try it again, just skip straight to season 2. Season 1 is only 6 episodes long. They're all basically terrible. And it is a modern miracle that someone watched those 6 and said, let's give them a full season order. Because what they should have said is, what the hell did we give these assholes money for? Because it's terrible.
That's about right.
And part of that is because you can tell that first season is really closer aligned to what the British Office show did, which is so much more mean-spirited and so much more unlikable. And then after that first season, they were like, we gotta make these characters more likable. And it was an immediate change, specifically and most egregiously with Michael Scott. He went from this is one of the most hateful characters I've ever seen, which David Brent, that character from the British Office, stays that way the whole show. You're like, he's one of the most contemptible humans to ever live. I will hate him for my whole life. But they very quickly, by the time season 2 started, they were like, let's fix his hair so it doesn't look like garbage. Let's maybe give Steve Carell some plugs or something.
Yeah, it looks pretty rough.
And B, let's make him a sometimes terrible but lovable goof rather than an objectively terrible person.
Yeah, we'll see if I ever. I mean, I have so many things I could do with my time that
You
maybe I'll
know,
get into
truer
it at
words
some
never
point.
spoken. The thing that killed me about that show, and the thing that if people were like, "Oh, should I watch The Office?" I would be like, "Watch seasons 2 and 3, maybe," because as soon as Jim and Pam get together, my interest in that show plummeted. For the exact reasons we talked about, it being a problem with Castle and it being a
Yep.
problem with Moonlighters. When your will they won't they become a yes they did, it's boring most of the time. There are shows that can pull it off. There are, but they are fewer and farther between than ones that really blow it once their will they won't they couple comes together.
Yeah. Yep. Well, what else have you been checking out? Anything fun? Have you been reading, playing,
Yeah.
or anything good? Tell us about it.
Speaking of trying things out to maybe be like a show in the background of your life, I mentioned pretty early on, I think, that I did that with all of Golden Girls, especially during the early pandemic. I just would turn Golden Girls on and have it on. And like, Golden Girls is one of those shows, you ain't got to pay that much attention to it. It's great background news to your, like, great background sound to your life. There's not really big stakes. There's not like, it's not serialized. It is very like episode of the week. And it was great for that. It aged a lot better than you'd think a show from the mid 80s would. And so then we were, we were talking with a friend of mine about, so after we came back from Comic-Con, my boss at the comic book store was like, "Hey, Tuesday night, the whole shop is going to Deadpool and Wolverine on my dime." And I was like, do I really want to see Deadpool and Wolverine a second time? No. Do I want to go hang out with my friends from the comic store? Yes, I do. So I guess I'll go. So I did. And so I've now seen Deadpool and Wolverine twice, which is definitely one time too many.
I was going to say unnecessary. Is that a good word for it?
Absolutely unnecessary. Especially we had seen it on Friday and I saw it again on Tuesday after that. That wasn't even enough time to forget any of the jokes.
That's true.
We were sitting there talking with my friend John, who's like, so like, there's a bunch of us who work for the store, and then there's this old guy, John, who lives in like the senior living facility that's like a block from the comic store. And he's just kind of a staple of downtown Iowa City because he just like walks around and goes to all the different shops basically every day, hangs out for half an hour to an hour chatting with us, and then goes on his merry way. So obviously, the boss invited John to come with us. So I was sitting by John and we were chatting, and somehow, we were talking about Twisters, which neither of us had seen, but both of us were like, "Oh, we'd like to see Twisters." But my gut reaction is that I want to go see Twister again first. But I haven't seen Twister probably since it came out in the 90s. And the only things I can remember about Twister are, I remember being blown away by the special effects. I bet they're not as good today, but I remember at the time thinking, whoa. Bill Paxton, what a national treasure. And oh my God, Helen Hunt, she's so pretty. That's the three things I remember about the show Twister,
Sure.
So we were talking about that, and I said that, and he was like, "Oh man, Helen Hunt really was pretty, wasn't she?" And then I was like, "Man, you remember that show Mad About You that Helen Hunt was on with Paul Reiser? That show went for like 6 or 7 years." And he was like, "Oh man, I haven't seen that since it was on." So we were talking about it, and I was like, "I wonder if that's like streaming anywhere or anything." So I pulled out justwatch.com, type in Mad About You, and it's like, one season is available for purchase on Apple. And it's like, one season? What? Oh, it's the revival. It's the revival season from 2019. But if you would like to watch the first 7 seasons of this show, I guess you better buy a DVD. And I was like,
seriously?
It is not available for purchase anywhere. The only digital copy you can get is the Revival Season 8, the Legacy sequel season from 2019. And if you would like to watch the 90s version, $35.86 at Amazon.com, please.
Wild.
But here's the thing. Yo ho, a pirate's life for me. No problems. We got that solved. I came home from the movie. I pulled up my computer, threw on the VPN. Mad About You Season 1. Boop, download. Mad About You Season 2. Boop, download. So I downloaded all of it. And then I was like, maybe this can be a new show to turn on in the background of my life. Here's the thing about that show. It's It's meaner spirited than I remembered it being from watching it in the 90s. And maybe that's the first few episodes. Maybe that's a season 1 problem, but like it falls into the pitfall that many of those like domestic comedies do, where it's like, I'm a smarmy husband and my wife sure is a bitch, but I love her anyway. Let's fuck. Like, that's
it's really true.
That's the show.
I remember, early on in our marriage, so late 90s, maybe early 2000s. I remember my wife and I, we used to watch Everybody Loves Raymond a lot, and we thought it was funny. And not a very long period of time passed, and I remember catching reruns, and we looked at each other, we were like, these people are awful to each other. Why
Absolutely
is this funny?
wretched.
These people are terrible to each other.
Yeah, no, it is absolutely. I'm a smarmy guy, and my wife is I'm a smarmy 4 out of 10, and my 8 out of 10 wife is a bitch. Like, that is these shows every single time, all of them, every single one. King of Queens, Everybody Loves Raymond, Mad About You. Any of these, like, many of these domestic couple shows are just like that. And so I like watched 3 or 4 episodes, and I was like, nah, fuck this. Maybe it gets better in season 2, but I don't feel like finding out. So I just stopped watching it. So I watched like 3 or 4 episodes and cannot recommend it. Maybe it's okay that it's not streaming anywhere. That was my impression of it.
Maybe.
Let's see. What else have I been up to? I played a couple of new games while I was on vacation that are worth mentioning. Okay. I didn't finish it, but I played a fair amount of a game called Affogato. Have you heard of Affogato?
No.
It is an interesting game because it is half of it I really, really like and half of it I really, really hate, which is why I stopped playing.
Okay.
Because half of it is like a visual novel style relationship building game, kind of like Persona style, where you're like meeting people in this town. Okay, so the premise of this town is you are a witch who has made a contract with an archdemon, and you move to this new town because you've been chased out of your previous town by bill collectors. You move to this new town to open a coffee shop. And then the witch who is in charge of that town, because in this universe, every town has every big city has like an official witch who that is her territory. She shows up at your place and is like, hey babe, haven't seen you in a few years. You do realize this is my city, right? And your character Affogato is like, yes, but I am not here to be the witch of this city. I'm just here to make coffee and try to pay bills. And so the witch of this town is like, well, I'll let you stay if you do some jobs for me, because I got some stuff that needs to be taken care of and I need you to take care of it. And so that is the premise of the game, is that there are these 3 big jobs of like casting out demons and saving these people that the witch of this town is making you do. And so the way that works is the part of the game that I like. Building the community, talking to the people around you, making your stats get bigger by going and reading at the bookstore or going to the arcade or eating spicy food. And then like basically inviting people over to your coffee shop and talking with them and deepening your relationship with them and making them coffee, because there's a whole like coffee mini game in it where you have to like remember how to make an Americano because you know that's this person's favorite drink, things like that. All that, love it. That's great. That's super fun. I'm really liking it. The art is great. The vibes are great. Then there's how you deal with the demon stuff. And that is a reverse tower defense game. So I know what you're thinking. Reverse tower defense, what do you mean? Well, what I mean is you're the enemies, and you need to set up your enemies and go through certain paths so that you are able to destroy the towers in the tower defense and get to the end without getting all of your characters killed. You need at least one character who is still active by the time you finish the map, or you have to restart the whole thing. And here's the thing. I don't really like tower defense games when they're regular that much. And a reverse one, it's just not for me. It's just not for me. And so that was kind of what happened with me. I got about halfway through, 2/3 of the way through the second mission of the 3 that the witch asks you to do. And I just kind of got bored with having to do the tower defense thing.
Sure.
So I stopped playing, unfortunately. But it is what it is. And then I also started playing a game that's kind of a little indie game called Lottle Knot.
Yes, that was in a Humble Bundle.
It was. So it's pretty fun. It's not very long. It's very cute. It's basically just like you play an underwater worker who has been tasked with cleaning the sea. And so you go to all these different parts of the ocean and you have to watch your oxygen, make sure that you go back to the places and fill your oxygen back up. And as you're out there cleaning things up, you'll meet these little things called lottles, which are basically like cute little axolotls that you will then build habitats for and, put together. And then they might have baby lottles. And it's very cute. It's very short. It's very fun. And that one is one that I would definitely recommend. I thought it was a good time. I really had a fun time with that game.
Good to know.
And then the last thing I will mention, just earlier today, after the thing that we're going to talk about, after I finished going through that, I also read 3 volumes of a manga it's all 3 volumes. So I read all of this manga called Goodbye My Rose Garden, which is one that I'd heard about for a while and was like, oh, I'm finally going to take the plunge and read this. And basically what this manga is if I had to pitch it to someone, it's like, what if Karumori's Emma, which is one of my all-time favorite comics by my number 1 favorite artist, Karumori, who does Bride Story. What if her earlier book, Emma, which is about Victorian maids and the maid falls in love with one of the lords of the house, blah, blah, blah. So what if that, slightly less well-written and about lesbians? And it was great. I had a great time. It was really, really good. And I was surprised with how adroit it was about navigating what would it be like to be a queer person in the early 1900s. They talk a lot about Oscar Wilde's court case and how he, was exiled to Paris and died basically penniless in Paris. And so it's talking about real world stuff and putting it into context. And it's interesting because the 2 main characters, one of them is this lady of this family, this house, and the other one is actually an immigrant from Japan who has come to England at the behest of this, woman who she knew in Japan, this English woman who had moved to Japan to be a teacher, because she had read these books by this author and was like, I need this author tells stories in the way that I want to be able to tell stories, and I'm inspired to write, and I've written these novels now. I need to go to England, talk to this person, come under this person's tutelage so that they can teach me how they've done what they've done so that I can do that too. And so she's looking for this author, Victor, whatever his name is, Victor Frank or something. Turns out that's a pen name, and it is actually the lady of the house for whom she has become a maid by felicitous circumstance. It was really good. I was really, really impressed by it. And so, if you want a good, solid 3 volumes of manga, incredible art, the detail in the fashion and all that sort of stuff is really, really, really impressive. And also the person who made it has a nom de plume that is Dr. Pepperco. And I think that's very funny.
Nice.
Do I know anything about Do I know anything about Dr. Pepperco? No. If you Google Dr. Pepperco, it's just this person, I'm not telling you any more than that. This person made Goodbye My Rose Garden. And you're like, okay, I guess you're not going to tell me anything. I really holding my feet to the fire here. But
there you go.
Anyway, that's about all I will mention right now.
Very good. Couple other things I thought of that I thought worth mentioning. Number 1.
I mean, you should mention the things we've been doing, because I think that the Act 2 of our podcast this week might
be a little short,
a little slim.
It's going to be a little thin. I finally finished Getting Things Done by David Allen. And by finished, I mean, I realized that the last 40 pages really weren't that germane to me. And again, I would like to say, I don't think I was convinced to be a firm adherent to the getting things done principles. I think that there were things for me to learn from it and things that I have applied, but the whole system itself, I think I don't know. I could see if you were an executive of a large company and had a lot of people reporting to you and this kind of thing, I could see where perhaps it would be more important to, or more useful, I should say, to really adhere to those principles. For me, I think I had gotten out of it what I needed. So I skimmed the last few pages really fast and then I said, good, I'm done. So I have now moved on to my next book, which is entitled Brain Rules for Aging Well. 10 Principles for Staying Vital, Happy, and Sharp. Because people,
Okay.
I am terrified of dementia. And so I spend an unusual amount of time each day engaged in activities that I have read studies that say that these will help me prevent dementia. And so I thought this book might be a nice little capstone to a lot of those things that I'm already doing. But I also decided I needed to read something for fun. So I'm also reading a paper book called Dusk Walker. Now, I have a habit that I am trying to control and rein in, and that habit is of kickstarting things that I find interesting. One of the things over the years that I kickstarted is something called the Black Ballad. The Black Ballad is a set of sort of a setting, some characters. Anyway, it's content that is 5th edition compatible. And the idea behind it, because I thought the idea sounded neat, the idea behind it is the Black Ballad is a setting, and there are a number of, stories and quests that you could use to put together a campaign that, as the dungeon master, the game master, you take your party on after a TPK, a total party kill. It is a setting that takes place in the afterlife. So it is an afterlife-focused setting for people who the entire party has died. And I was like, that's kind of a neat conceit. Anyway, when I got all the rewards and the books and all this stuff, one of the things that came with it was this little 260-page paperback book called Dusk Walker that is a story set in the Black Ballad setting. And so I looked at it and I thought, that looks light, easy, and fluffy, and I want to read it. So I've started reading that. And so far, it's all right. It's not going to set the world on fire, but I was just looking for something fairly easy, and this is kind of hitting the bill. Other than that, haven't really been playing a whole lot. I haven't had time. Again, last week, all the time when I could have been playing, I just was downstairs reading and doing other things while I had the Olympics on because the Olympics were great and I enjoyed that. But I think that's actually really about it. So let me tell you a little story.
Take us on a tale.
I'm going to do my best. When I was 19, I went on my mission, and I went to Guatemala. And in Guatemala, I remember walking through or being in a house somewhere and seeing the kids watching a cartoon called Los Caballeros del Zodiaco, Knights of the Zodiac. And it was interesting to me because it was very clearly one of these, it was an anime cartoon adapted in some way for kind of a Western audience. Now,
Sure.
when I was in 3rd grade, when I was 8 years old, Robotech was showing every morning at 8 o'clock. School started at 8:30. So I would basically watch Robotech until the very last second when my mom was like, you've got to go to school right now. And then I would always miss the last few minutes of each episode. For those who are familiar, they know what Robotech is. For those who... Go ahead.
You never got that Min-May kiss because I was coming at the end of the episode.
I know. But I loved Robotech. It fascinated me. And again, Robotech, and I watched the first series and then I watched the second where it was a little weirder and then the third where it was different, and they tried to take these three separate shows and kind of somehow turn them into one continuous story. But I loved that. My friends and I used to play Battle of the Planets. He had a tree house. We'd all written our Battle of the Planets characters above each one of the windows in the treehouse, and the treehouse was our ship. And so we'd stand over the windows where those were our stations in the ship. And so I had this kind of, which is, and again, anybody who's heard me say this is weird because y'all know I really struggle with like anime and stuff now. But when I was a kid, I was really into these, not really anime, but like these westernized versions that companies would take and kind of dub and tweak a little bit to and bring over here to the US. So as a 19-year-old, I see Knights of the Zodiac and I'm like, ooh, that kind of looks cool. I'll check that out when I get home. Fast forward 2 years, I did not check that out when I got home. I don't know if I forgot about it or what. Anyway, this is in the back of my head and has been since 1995. About a month and a half ago, I'm standing in line at Fred Meyer waiting to check out. And you know, in all the aisles, they've got the end cap. And on the end cap is a Blu-ray. And this Blu-ray says Knights of the Zodiac. And all of a sudden, all of these years just come rushing back to me. And I grab this Blu-ray disc and I pick it up and I'm looking at the cover. And I'm like, Sean Bean? Famke Janssen? I'm like, what?
Some random Japanese boy?
Yes, some random Japanese boy. And I'm looking at this and I put it back because no, I didn't buy it. Thank goodness. We'll get there. But I did reach out to Eden and I was like, yo, we've got to watch this movie. And so we watched this movie. And I don't want to spoil things too fast, but I think the story I told might be the most interesting aspect of us watching this movie. Eden, what did you think about Knights of the Zodiac?
Can I make a confession? Can
Please
I confess to something that I have never done before?
Oh, I'm excited. Please do.
I'm not a speed my media up kind of girly. I'm just not. I listen to podcasts. I use Overcast. Like, don't get me started on the new update to Overcast. I know it was the 10th anniversary, but that was underbaked. Should have stayed in the oven for another 6 months. But I use Overcast, and Overcast has a very, very good smart sound feature that cuts out the dead space in a podcast.
It does.
And it's nearly imperceptible, does a very good job of it. That's the only motivation to the timing of podcasts I listen to. I do not speed them up. I'm not a 1.5 kid. I'm not a 2 times kid. Okay. I listen to it at regular speed with the smart sound on. When I'm watching things, even YouTube or things like that, I watch it at regular speed. The only time in memory that I can remember where I've watched things at 2 times speed was a god-awful LinkedIn training that I was just trying to get through so I could get the certification so I could tell my boss I did something with my time that day. So awesome. Then it was a 5-hour AI series of trainings on generative AI, and I smoked through that sucker in 2.5 hours because I watched it at 2 times speed, and it was boring and I didn't really learn anything. But I'm just not a speed things up kind of kid.
Okay.
After 2 minutes, I put this movie on 1.5 speed and watched it that way till the end.
I love that.
It was this morning, and I was like, well, I got a meeting at 11, and I have time to watch it because I started right at 9, and listeners, this movie comes in at a hefty hour 52. Which feels short compared to the bloated runtimes of 2023 cinema, I understand. But for what feels like it should have been a direct-to-video sort of thing, those babies should not be more than 90 minutes. Those should come in at a cool 85. And this was coming in at 112 minutes? So I was like, I have the time for it. And then I got super bored 2 minutes in, and I said, Plex has 1.5 speed. What happens? And I clicked 1.5 speed, and then the movie was over faster.
That is brilliant.
So that's how I felt about this movie. I for the first time in my life, and like, I'm not judging anyone who watches YouTube at double speed. It's YouTube. It's some weirdo talking about whatever, or like clips from a podcast. I don't judge a person who listens to a podcast or an audiobook at 2 times speed. I applaud you for being able to keep things straight when the voices are coming at such a clip. But I would say anyone who watches a movie at anything more than 1 time speed, what are you doing? But now I understand why you might feel compelled to do that. Don't do it with a good movie. Don't do it with even okay movie, but you could do it with Knights of the Zodiac.
Yeah, yes, you could. I will confess to being a 1.75 to 2 times YouTube, podcast, and audiobook person. That's me. So when I listen to podcasts at one speed, I'm like, you all are drunk. What is wrong with you? But I digress. Look, folks, let's give you a brief little, this is going to say a lot. The budget for this movie, $60 million. So
$60 million.
$60 million.
How much of that was paying Famke Johnson and Sean Bean? Probably at least 10 to 15 million of that.
I need to just, now I understand that we're comparing a 2016 movie to a 2023 movie, but I would like to just point out for the audience that the original 2016 Deadpool movie had a budget of $58 million.
Are you kidding, dog?
Okay. So now the original Deadpool made $786 million. So I think they did pretty well. Knights of the Zodiac made $7 million. Worldwide.
$7 million.
Worldwide. That is not just the domestic. That is worldwide. And I think that a lot of people who contributed to that $7 million probably should get their dollars back, because this movie is really boring.
I don't understand. I'm reading the reception section on the Wikipedia page, and Eric Francisco of Inverse praised the film, saying that it was, quote, secretly brilliant in its holistic understanding of what makes anime appealing as a medium. Eric Francisco, I don't think you understand what makes anime appealing as a medium. He added melodramatic characters, impenetrable world building. No, it's not impenetrable. It's bad. There's a difference there, Eric. And acrobatic choreography are all hallmarks to some of the best anime. Zodiac is faithful to these eccentricities, which most real Hollywood movies overlook in favor of verisimilitude. No, they don't. I don't think you know what verisimilitude means, Eric Francisco, because that is not what Hollywood movies do. We're not talking about Cleo from 5 to 7 here, bud. Like, this was a bad Hollywood-esque film.
Yeah. So Gareth watched this with me, and
braver than the troops.
Listeners of the podcast, you all know we've watched some bad movies, and we've watched some movies in the not too distant past that made me angry. This movie is just so lazy and
it's so
boring and bland that I couldn't even feel angry at it.
Yeah.
This was like the ultimate wet fart of a movie. You don't get the satisfaction of a nice big ripper that sounds great and you feel better afterwards. And you didn't actually shit your pants, so you don't need to go change, but you kind of wish that you could change. But it's like every single decision they made in this movie, it's like they looked at it and they said, what would be the most predictable cliche thing for us to do? And then they said, that's it. That's what we need to do right now. I just every step of the way. Like, was there I ask you, Eden, was there a single, even mild surprise in this movie?
No, there wasn't. It was the most predictable movie I can remember having seen in recent memory. Like, again, we've watched some stinkers, some of which I have some fondness for. Madam Web, not a good movie. I'm not out here to defend Madam Web, except for when I'm definitely going to defend Madam Web, which I did in that episode. Go listen to it. But did you know at the start of that movie what was going to happen in that movie? No, because it makes some choices that are inexplicable and inscrutable.
Yeah.
Knights of the Zodiac never makes a choice that is not the most predictable possible option that you're just like, of course you would do that. Yeah, oh, yeah, of course you did. Okay, yeah, okay, yeah, sure.
Yeah. I'm
And
going to
here's the
give.
thing.
Oh, please.
Here's the thing. The costumes look so bad. The quarry got its work in. Like, this was done in a quarry, just like every toku show, but the costumes weren't even as good as a modern toku costume usually is. And it's like, these are clearly made from the same foam that all of the cosplay is made from, because I'm watching it jiggle the way that cosplay foam jiggles. You can't do that in your $60 million movie. This needs to have a little more weight to it.
And here's the thing. Having just been to Comic-Con, there were
you saw some good stuff.
Comics that blew these things. I mean, tons of costumes that blew these things away. They all look, I mean, the bad guy's armor looked like crap. And when Seiya's armor finally, he gets like the full armor at the end, it just looks dumb. And like you said, completely insubstantial. It is so just not there.
Well, and here's the thing that kills me. Like, I've never read Saint Seiya. I always thought it kind of looked mid. If I was going to watch 80s anime, I would watch better 80s anime than this. I would be watching Dragon Ball finally. But like, I look at the art from that show or from the comic and I'm like, okay, I get it. Like, it ain't for me, but those are fun. And then I look at what they did with this and I'm like, how'd you blow it this bad? Why is this costume so boring?
It really is. So I'm going to give...
He also needed to be 40% more twink. Like, Saint Seiya, Seiya is a twink, and that guy was not a twink. He needed to be 40% more twinky.
I'm going to give a really brief overview of this movie because nobody should go watch it. Seiya is an orphan. He's looking for his sister. He doesn't know where she is. We get flashbacks to her being kidnapped by Gurad, who is Famke Janssen's character's name. Why she has a name Gurad? I mean, seriously, the name's ridiculous. Anyway, jump forward. We've got Seiya is fighting in a cage fight, which just feels so worn out and lame. All of a sudden, some weird blue light appears, and then here comes Sean Bean to try and get the kid, and here comes Famke Janssen and the other, like her, again, really stupid costume bad guys, and fight, run away. They capture one of Sean Bean's characters, which I don't even remember his name. Who cares what his name is? Really, who cares? They capture...
It genuinely doesn't matter. His name, if you want to know, is Almond Kiddo, because I kept thinking they were saying almond. I thought his name was Almond. You know, I mean, like the nut.
Yeah, that would have been actually just as interesting.
It was.
They grab Seiya. They take Seiya back to Kiddo's compound, which is, you know, this super fancy looking kind of, it's sort of like, it's not really on an island, but a little peninsula type thing jutting out. And it kind of looks like just a big sort of Greco-Roman style architecture, fancy house, but it's also a compound because there's his daughter, who goes by Sienna, but secretly she's the goddess Athena. And that's the whole conceit, is that there's gods and goddesses and they were real and blah, blah, blah. Like, really, who cares? And then there were these knights, the knights of the zodiac, who somehow do something. And you find out that Sienna, she has access to Cosmo. That's the name of the power. I mean, seriously, Cosmo. And she's having a hard time controlling it. So she starts freaking out and everything goes purple and flashy. And then like big metal things come down to block her off because Gurad, Kiddo's ex-wife, is looking for, wants to come and find them, and they're trying to hide her. Long story short, Kiddo tells Seiya, oh, you need to protect her. You're destined to become the Pegasus Knight, the warrior for Athena. And so he has to go train. And there's like this scene with Sienna and Seiya, and there is absolutely no chemistry between these two whatsoever. And they go on like a bike ride, and then that's all it takes. I mean, like a motorcycle ride, and then that's all it takes. And boom, now Seiya is completely in. He goes from just like moments before he's like, screw you all, this is dumb, I don't believe any of this, I just want to find my sister, to like, okay, yeah, you betcha, I'll become the Pegasus Knight and I'll do everything I can for you because whatever. I don't know. He goes to some mountain. He climbs the mountain. He meets this other knight, Marin, and she teaches him how to access his Cosmo. And it goes poorly at first, but then again, it goes, then he figures it out. And now he gets his armor, but it's really lame armor. It like the first set of armor is really lame.
Yeah.
He gets control of his Cosmo. He has this vision, realizes that Kiddo was there when Gurad, turns out, came and took Patricia, his sister. He goes back. Sienna again takes him away, and then Gurad shows up to Kiddo's hideout, and they capture Sienna. Seiya gets like knocked down, and there's the dude who he was fighting at the beginning, like gets. He has this one fight with Seiya at the beginning and decides that fight where he didn't really lose, he just got knocked back by this blue light, is enough for him to literally be like, I'll do whatever you want me to do as long as I can kill Seiya. Give me whatever power you want. Do whatever you want to me as long as I can kill Seiya. It is so incomprehensible. They have a fight.
Dumb.
It really is. So anyway, long story short, Sienna is at Gurad's compound. Oh, yes.
Yeah, don't forget that Gurad has an underling who is also one of the Knights of the Zodiac.
Correct.
But the Phoenix.
The Phoenix Knight. Now, I have to interject this here. Gurad's base is literally a large black skyscraper with a great big red logo in the middle of it. Like it again, so predictable. So like the laziest thing in the world that her base could be, that's what they went with. In fact,
then her other house is like a weird Roman or Greek themed house in the middle of the Black Forest ? There's literally nothing else around it. There's not even roads to get there.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's where now they have taken Sienna. Sienna's laying on this thing. They're going to drain her Cosmo away. And then all of a sudden, Gurad decides, no, she doesn't want to do this to her daughter. And she tries to stop it. And then the Phoenix Knight prevents her from stopping it. And then he turns into the Phoenix Knight with all his fancy armor that looks bad. And Seiya turns into the Pegasus Knight with all his armor that looks bad, and then fight. And then they're interrupted by Sienna. She's almost completed her transformation. It's causing destruction. She regains control. She falls unconscious. Then she wakes up and now her hair's purple and she has bangs. I'd like to point out she didn't have bangs before. Now she has long straight purple hair and bangs.
A nice push. It's a nice look.
She reconciles.
It's actually bad look. I need to say it's a bad wig.
It's really bad.
It's a very bad wig.
It's really bad. We forgot to mention that Almond Kiddo died. He booby trapped, self-destructs his base. He dies in it because, of course, Sean Bean dies in it.
He's Sean Beaned, yeah.
There was a thing where at some point as a youth, Sienna had lost control of her Cosmo and it like damaged Gurad's arms. So they're like these weird kind of robot arms, whatever. We don't really know, but she fixes those. And then Sienna and Seiya leave with Mylock, who was Kiddo's, like underling, and Nero, or the Phoenix Knight, watches them leave. And then the old gods are returning and the knights will be needed to stop them. And they're going to need to find Seiya's sister, Patricia. And none of that's ever going to happen because this movie didn't make any money and it shouldn't have made any money.
Yep. Setting up a sequel that will absolutely never happen.
Never, ever. I mean, I think we've already really said, honestly, all the things we need to. It's just, it feels so lazy. It feels, and I hate to say that because I've never made a movie and I'm sure that a lot of work went into it, but it doesn't show it. You can't see that there was anyone at any point in this who seemed to give a shit about the movie. Like it just doesn't feel like anyone was ever invested.
No, like who are the people who made this movie? You might be asking yourself. You're like, okay, are you guys just like ragging on some Toku shit that was like dubbed or whatever and then randomly had Famke Janssen and Sean Bean in it? No, the whole movie's in English. It was directed by Tomek Baginski, who is a Polish dude who like worked for CD Projekt. He's the guy who made the game intro to The Witcher 3. And then they were like, hey, why don't we get the guy who made the intro cinematics to the Witcher movies to make our Saint Seiya movie? What? What?
Yeah.
And it's written by Josh Campbell, Matt Stukin, and Keel Murray. So, like, it's not like we're sitting down chatting with Masami Kurumada about his work and how to carefully adapt Saint Seiya. And also, if you want to be depressed, let me just read you a few lines from the Wikipedia page from the Saint Seiya manga so you can see what this show is that they based this boring ass movie on. Here is how the first story arc, which is what this is based on because there's a girl named Sayori who also has Athena inside of her, and Seiya's coming to control his Cosmo or whatever. So here's what it says though. Oh, first off, the Pope is evil. And right there, you got me way more excited than I would be with a boring evil corporate lady ? You got an evil Pope? I'm in. So the Bronze Saints learn that Sayori is Athena's reincarnation. The Pope once tried to kill her as a baby. Deciding to join forces with Sayori, the Bronze Saints, which that's his team, that's Seiya's team, go to the sanctuary to defeat the Pope. But upon their arrival, Sayori is severely wounded by a gold arrow from a silver saint and will die at the end of the day. Believing the Pope may be able to heal her, the Bronze Saints go to find him. To do so, they must go through 12 temples, each one guarded by one gold saint. Okay, we got too many saints here, guys. The most powerful saints of Athena are the gold saints. Some of these gold saints are friendly, but others are just as corrupt as the Pope and take a sick pleasure in fighting the bronze saints. This is all boring, like typical shonen battle shit, but like, following several battles, Seiya gets to the Pope's temple and learns that he is actually the gold saint Gemini Saga, who suffers from a split personality, one good and one evil. So the Pope is half good, half evil split personality. His evil side took over completely and had killed the real Pope to obtain more power. With help from his friends Cosmos, Seiya is able to knock out Saga and use the shield from Athena's statue to heal Sayori in time. Shortly afterwards, Saga, his good side having regained control, commits suicide as self-punishment. Now, that sounds terrible, but it would have been more interesting than what we watched.
Yeah. I
want an evil, schizophrenic Pope, please.
It would have been more interesting than this.
Oh, wow.
So, I'm glad we watched it because now I don't ever have to think about it again.
You saw it at the checkout and you were like, I should watch that. And you did. And now you never need to think about it again. It's done. It's out of your brain. 21% positive on Rotten Tomatoes. And you can be like, yeah, 6 years from now, someone will be like, you ever seen some real bad movies? You can be like, yeah, I did see this movie one time. It's called Knights of the Zodiac.
It's true.
But actually, that probably won't even happen. You'd remember something more memorable that you watched that was
exactly
bad.
Right.
And this movie will never be remembered again.
Again, it's just a wet fart. It's just a wet fart of a movie. So
it truly is.
Well, we'll go ahead and wrap that up then, and we'll be back in another couple of weeks. If you haven't subscribed to the podcast and you're listening to this, please subscribe. We watch movies that are more interesting, whether because they're good or bad, than Knights of the Zodiac. We also check out other things, and we'd love for you to subscribe and join us as we check out just whatever kind of tickles our fancy and see what we think of it. If you haven't as well, please leave us a review, leave us a star rating. And if you'd like to get a hold of us with specific feedback, please reach out at feedback@themiddleofculture.com, and we'll go ahead and address that. And until next time, thanks for watching this boring ass movie with me, Eden.
You're welcome. And thanks for chatting with me about it.
Anytime.
All right.